Now, before I run through the full planche update, I want to take you through a little bit more detail the exercise that I think is really helping me with my planche, and one that I've started to use a lot more with clients and in classes to teach the planche. It's the planche leans using the wall. Now, the cool thing with this drill is it can be done for any level. It can be done for the beginner just learning to make a strong protracted position, even for like general scapular conditioning and like just to stop the scapula from winging. This type of movement is really good for that. Body positioning for handstanding, and obviously then if you're working towards a planche, I would definitely add this to your training. I'm doing this as my main warm-up now for my full planche. Now, we can do it on P-bars, we can do it on the floor. I'm going to show the floor version first, and just grab yourself some like a marker of some sort. So I'm just using this lens cap as my marker, so that way if you walk away, so if you're doing something like planche leans and front levers or something as a superset, every time you come back to do your planche leans, you don't have to mess around to find your position because you have your marker. So I'm just going to line myself up so my toes are pushed against the wall, and then I'm going to put the marker down by my thumb. So go by your thumb or your index finger. And then I'm just going to go up into a push-up position. And then I'm going to go into a protraction. Trying to keep the hips down, I'm just going to go up into protraction. So I'm pushing through that upper back position and holding there for a few seconds. Now, if that feels easy, and just make sure that you're not doing this with the hips. So that's something you'll see a lot. It's definitely something that I do and I'm trying to get rid of, is to keep the hip so you've got this straight line between your shoulders, hips and feet. Now, if that feels okay and you can get into some protraction there, then I'm just going to move the marker back slightly, and I'm going to move my hands back. So index finger, little finger in line with the lens cap, exactly the same position. I've got slight external rotation. You'll probably find that you need to increase the external rotation, so turn the hands out as you get closer back towards the wall. Repeat the same thing. Again, if that feels okay and it's not going to be too hard to hold, go back again. So keep doing that. So back further and further and further. Just be careful when you go back. Like I say, you don't do this with the hips. We want to make sure we can keep coming forwards there. Now for me, that's now got hard on the wrists. So I'm not going to go further back in this direction. I would do my holds there. So you could do 10, 15, even 30-second holds there. Just be careful of the wrists. Now, if you video straight on from the side, you can look for reference points, like where do your hips get relevant to your hands? Are they close to being on top? Where do your shoulders come relevant to your hands? How far forwards are your shoulders going? Look for straightness of the arms, hip height. And most people will find it way more comfortable if we use the P-bars. I would still use the marker if you use the P-bars, especially if you've got something like this, where we have a longer P-bar, then you will need to make sure that your hand is exactly the same position every time. I'm going to turn out slightly. So I'm going to line up in the same position I just done the floor version. This is a good way of comparing P-bars to hands. So there, that's way easier to hold. So I could actually bring the P-bars back, protract more, which will force me to planche more and take the shoulders even further past the hands. And I can feel there that my hips are getting close to being on top of my hands, which is obviously the ultimate goal. So have a play with that one. I've been using that as my main warm-up for my planche exercises in the last couple of sessions, and I really like it. I'm getting good feedback from clients and class members as well. Let me know down in the comments if you've got any feedback or comments or questions about the planche lean. And let's get into the planche update. It's going really well, I think. So the journey to full planche, this is the best session I've had. So the one I'm showing now is last Saturday's session. It felt like I got the closest ever to a full planche. But before I go into a little bit more detail about that session, I'm just going to recap what I've done so far. So I've mainly done 3 sessions. So this is the 3rd session that I'm actually doing right now. So I've done the session before that one. I've introduced front lever back into my training. Originally, when I was doing like tuck planche, shutter planche work, I'd always do front lever with it. I dropped that and was just mainly concentrating on planche. I was messing around with a little bit of front lever, but I was doing it as separate sessions with the idea that I'd have all my energy for the planche because that was like the priority. I'm now finding that my biceps are getting really fatigued, or my shoulder bicep area, and it's actually helping me to do some front lever work in between. So it's like stretching it out in the opposite direction. Now, I'm not amazing at front lever, but you can see this session where I first introduced it. So I'm doing these planche on the floor. So this is where I'm on my hands, not the P-bars. I'm doing my normal planche session, but I've also added in this front lever straight after it. So I'm using this lower bar setup so I can just climb straight into it. And because I was doing planche push-ups, so going to the end limit and then just going down into that bent arm planche position, I done the same in the front lever. So I'm starting in the bent arm position and then I lower and down to my like maximum front lever position, which is not great, but it's more like a froggy position, trying to keep the hips in line with the shoulders. I done a couple of sets where my hips dropped a little bit too low. And like the next day to 2 days after that, I was actually really sore in the upper back and traps from that front lever work. And then Saturday's session, so that was really busy in the gym. So I was like at the front of the gym. I didn't do front lever work with that particular session, but I was feeling the best I've ever done in that straddle open hip position. So I played around with actually closing the legs for a split second in the straddle. Then I actually went for some full planche positions and just played around with that. As a warm up to that I done lots of sets of the planche leans using the wall. And I thought it was a really good time to just have a look at a recap between week 1 and this week that I'm on now. So this is like my 6th or 7th week. So if you look at the differences between Saturday's session, so the best I've ever had, and then week 1, and look at the shoulder position relative to the hands, so what the distance of the shoulder is, how far forwards I'm getting, where the hip is relative to the hands, so how close the hip is to being on top of the hands, and then just the overall positioning, so open hip, straighter arm, a slightly better protraction position, but I could still work on that. And also the head position. So that was one of the feedback I had from, I can't remember who it was, so I'll double check that as well and I'll stick their name up here. So they said about the head position, like looking forwards in my protraction holds. So that's why I added in and have done more of that, and that's really helping. So I'm really pleased at the moment with the progression from Saturday session and the week 1, and I'm confident that I'm going in the right direction. And then front lever, I'm just doing some sub-maximal work, more to just get the lengthening back to the biceps, just to make that feel a bit more comfortable. Yeah, I assume that's what is happening, is they're just stretching out the bicep and shoulder after doing the planche position. It's like the opposite movement, but it feels much better after I've done that. So now I'm using a slightly different technique to get into it. So I'm a bit more like coming down out of a 90-degree handstand push-up or a slight bent arm position, and then I'm trying to push into the straight arm position at the same time, lengthening the legs and going towards that full planche. I think it's making my angle a little bit like this, but I feel that's given me the best position where I can actually hold for like a split second, maybe 2 seconds, which I'm finding much easier than lifting up from the floor. Obviously that makes sense, going up from a high position and lowering, as opposed to going against gravity and trying to lift your feet up, because you've got the energy it takes to lift up plus hold the planche position. Okay, so watching that last attempt back, ideally my arm wants to be in this position, so fully locked out. At the moment it's probably there. So I want to try and get that. It doesn't look like much, but if I can do that, then it's all the shoulder, it's proper full planche position, I'm assuming, instead of a slight bent elbow. So that's my goal now, is over the next few weeks and months, is to get that position, get a slightly stronger planche position, and then just bring it down so it's a little bit lower, and then obviously increase the time to around 5 to 10 seconds. So with this pulley set up, the best one I've done so far is I've lifted the 3 kilos and just got my toes off the floor for a couple of seconds. I've brought the 2 kilo over this time. I did go to the 4 kilos before, I think it was the 4, I'll double check that, and got like a 5-ish second hold. So let's see if I can get the 2 kilos off the floor today. So obviously if you're going to do something like this, you want exactly the same setup. I'm using the same pulley, I'm using the same dumbbells, I'm using the same P-bars. So it looks like I've improved by about 1 kilo, because I can lift the 2 kilos off now. So the test will be, if I put a 3 kilo on, can I now hold that for time? Which is the same result I was getting with the 4 kilos before. So I'll double check and I'll put it up on the screen what I done last time, but I think that I'm now getting the same result with 1 kilo less than I was before. So I definitely don't think I've got the full planche yet, but I'm getting very close to it. I might have visited it for like a second or two. It depends what you say is the green light for a planche, or to say you've got a full planche. I want to get to the point where I can hold it for 5 to 10 seconds with control, with straight arms, and have like a level body. Any constructive feedback will be awesome. If you have any ideas of other things I should try, or any feedback on what you see that I'm doing, or any questions about your own planche training, stick it down in the comments below. That would be great. Make sure you subscribe for tutorials, follow-alongs, and training vlogs like this. and to see whether I can get the full planche at 45 years old. Thumbs up would also be greatly appreciated and helps the channel out. I will speak to you next time, guys. Thanks again.